When we last chatted with today's guest from 2023, he told me that I, quote, had some of the best intros on the internet, end quote. Well, here's hoping he still feels that way. Kevin Nether is one of the best voices on YouTube for product reviews. His videos range from the typical fare you'd expect, like TVs and gaming devices, to the less obvious but still important, like refrigerators and vacuum cleaners. His grounded, straightforward approach to talking about tech has earned him hundreds of thousands of followers, and his 10-plus years in the review space have earned him the respect and collaboration of brands like Sony, TLC, Samsung, Google, and more. We discussed how his work has shifted in the last year, such as leaving his 9-to-5 and committing to YouTube as his primary income. We looked at how he edits his work these days, leaving behind the fad of retention editing and focusing on simple, effective storytelling. And we compared notes on what it's like to work from home with a kid running around trying to get your attention. Spoiler, neither of us had a very good idea of how to solve for that particular issue. This is Kevin Nether, the Tech Ninja. Welcome to Building Value. I'm Jason Nellis, and I am obsessed with the creator economy. I've spent my career at the intersection of creativity and technology, building products at companies like Hulu and Facebook, all trying to make it easier and more valuable for artists to do what they love. Whether they're content creators themselves or the people building products that creators use, every one of the folks I interview offer compelling ideas on how to create something of lasting value. If you like what you hear and you want to get more, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you consume fine podcast products. And if you really love what you hear, leave a review. That always helps. And with that, on with the show. And here we are again with friend of the show, Kevin Nether. You may know him as Kevin the Tech Ninja. Kevin, man, good to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, always good to see you, man. How you doing?
You know, I'm good. A little tired. You know, you and I both have kids. You know what that's like. It's
Sure.
It's exhausting being a parent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree on that one.
Yeah. But let's dive in. You know, you joined the podcast last year. We talked a little bit about your process. We talked a little bit about sort of how you conceptualize your videos. And these days, as I was not allowed to reveal during that time, you were actually making the transition to leaving your day job and becoming a full-time creator. Talk me through what that experience was like and what it's been like now that you've been on your own and solo for about a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that, as we sort of talked about a little bit offline, that experience for me was very scary just because, I've been working full time since I was 20 years old. Right. So that was 15 years at the time of working full time, having a career, building a career, like working up the corporate ladder, if you will. And then to a certain point, just to walk away from it. And that is definitely a scary proposition for me because you think about like the golden handcuffs, right? You got the 401k coming in, they're matching. And, I worked a really good job too. Like I worked a job that I could have worked the rest of my life and worked my way up and I would have been some director of marketing or something like that. And I would have lived a pretty good life. But, it was always just this looming thing over my head that I'm building this brand for myself that, to be honest, I was making more money on my personal brand than a corporate brand. And it was getting to the point where I was sitting in meetings at work discussing things that were very trivial to me because my mind was on bigger projects and bigger ideas that I had that I really couldn't work on, sadly, because I was working for someone else. So it was one of those situations where I needed to make the move. But as you said, having a family, having those things, I need to make sure those things were in place first before I was able to make that move. So once I did, it was still difficult for me. But after a couple months, I got in the swing of things. I was like, wow, what took me so long?
Love that. What's it been like? I know that you've been a solo creator for a long time, but, I think one of my fears is that idea that I'm now responsible for, my family's income and it's really on me, right? There's no larger structure around me. It's really sort of me. I know that that's a lot of folks' nightmare. You seem to have stepped up to the challenge and really grown since we spoke last year. Do you really feel like the opportunities are still coming and this is the not only the right choice for you in the short term, but that this continues to be the direction you want to go?
Yeah, so I mean, I was definitely in a unique situation because, I was saving money like crazy. So I even told myself, worst case scenario, I don't make another dollar on YouTube. I am okay for X amount of months. So I kind of gave myself that wiggle room, that leeway, had a nice nest egg that I had for myself that kind of puts kind of takes the pressure away from me. It's just like, let me continue to do what I do. now I just have more time to do it. And that's kind of the mindset I had going forward. So yeah, there's definitely some slower months, definitely some good months. And it's kind of this, for especially in the tech game, very ebbs and flow around release dates of products. So I know as long as products continue to come out, I will be okay. There's definitely other opportunities for additional revenue sources and revenue growth. But my main thing is to and I'm still working on that, establishing systems around me to make this easier for me and to be more profitable and, have a normal schedule. Cause I'm still kind of working that chaotic life schedule where it's like, I don't have office hours per se, and I'm still working weekends. So I need to figure that whole thing out. But that definitely comes with time.
I don't think I know a single entrepreneur who understands work-life balance. So I think you're probably in good company there. I for sure have no concept of how to put a hard line between those things. And I know with you have a little one at home, same as me, roughly. I think your son is a few years older, but even still, that sense of like, if I don't, I have to at the very least clamp down on some time for kid play,
Yeah.
but everything else gets bled into. Let's do a little bit of a breakdown on how the business side of things works for you. So, as I understand it, when an influencer gets to the level that you're at, most of the opportunities tend to come in the form of sponsorships or brand relation opportunities. You sort of tend to think of your AdSense as being performance, performance pay, right? If I do well and this video does well, I get a little bit of extra. And that affiliate revenue kind of just sits in the middle of that. Is that still the case? Are there other sort of opportunities you're looking at for monetization or growth? I know a lot of folks are leaning on Patreon right now or looking at merch. Are those opportunities coming across your plate?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head there as far as like the structure of kind of how it works. And for me, I'm a type of person that if I can't fully put everything into it, I'm not doing it. So years ago, a long time ago, I did a Patreon thing. I wasn't providing enough value, and I'm being very transparent with that. And even now, I know I cannot provide additional value because I already feel like I'm maxed out already as far as the value I'm able to provide to my audience at this moment. So for me, it's definitely working with brands, working with sponsors, and working through AdSense and then affiliate sales, which goes up and down based off products. And there's other avenues, but those are things that I haven't really fully looked at because I can't put in that full effort. Like, of course, there's going to be merch, but I don't want to just like have my face or logo on a T-shirt and try to sell it for $30. You know what I mean? That's not the way I want to handle that. So for me, just focusing on those revenue streams, and typically those are good enough for me to be very comfortable in life. But I'm always looking at other opportunities as far as time allows.
One thing I'd love to ask you about is, how do you think about innovation versus sticking to what works? Because I know a lot of content creators, growth has flattened a little bit. Thinking about sort of how to innovate on format is top of mind. When you think about the tried and true methods of monetization, does the same foundation hold for video format and review format?
Yeah, that's something I'm actually dealing with right now because when I started, the barrier of entry to make YouTube videos was very, very high. So you're able to just make a video and it does well. Now there's so much competition, which I definitely do welcome, but at the same time makes it a little bit tough for someone like me making content because I've been around for so long and people have heard my voice for so long, which can help, but also can hurt because if someone's looking for a fresh take or fresh perspective, maybe they look at someone else, or people are coming into YouTube with full production teams and things like that can make them faster, more lighter, and can make things even better. So it does get a little bit difficult, and that's something I struggle with now. Like, how do I make my content remain valuable, and how do I stand out from the crowd of many, many people? And I think there's a big shift right now that you're hearing about it right now. There's a big shift right now in YouTube about kind of get away from the Mr. Beastification of like retention editing and everything has to be so fast paced and regain the attention every 2 seconds. I mean, there's so many platforms already doing that people may want a more casual experience on YouTube and something that's not so that. So I've historically practiced that type of editing, but now I'm trying to scale that back to kind of go back to more personality based and opinion based and kind of the basis of what my channel was from the get go. But every day it's definitely a struggle to kind of learn that. There's definitely checks and balances when I'm editing now, because now I have to like say, you know what, that's a lot. That's too many cuts. Like, let me scale that back. Let me pull it back a little bit. Let the personality shine through a bit more. And it's a definitely a balance and definitely a struggle.
I'm not sure everybody knows what retention editing means if they're not specifically in the YouTube averse. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that became really popular and now why we're moving away from it?
Yeah, so retention editing is basically editing to regain that attention of the audience. It says like every, depending on who says it, but every 5 to 10 seconds, the audience can lose attention. So you always do something that gains their attention or give them something to always look forward to. So, for example, let's give Mr. Beast as an example. He'll do something and whatever. He'll take this $200 plant, but he has a $5,000 plant. It's like, wow, this plant is great for $200, but pretty soon we're going to talk about the $500 plant over here, and they'll show that plant for a second and then bring you back. They always want you to continue to look forward to the next thing, and it's always about what's next, not what's currently happening. And it really creates videos that are fast paced, a lot of camera movements, a lot of this is happening, that is happening, and what's happening, how it's happening. Everything is so over the top and sensational. It's just, it becomes a lot. And that does a great job at keeping people's attention. But at the same time, I think people are getting exhausted too, since every platform is doing that. Short form is doing that. And now people are coming back to YouTube for a longer experience, a more slowed down thing when they have more time to watch. Because what we're also seeing is that TV watch time has gone up significantly. So people are watching these YouTube videos on their TV now, and you can't scroll away on a TV, as far as far as I know. So people want to sit down for a longer experience when they're watching on TV.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of how we used to think about TV viewing back at Hulu in the early days, where it was sort of lean in versus lean back. And on a TV, you're very leaned back. You want it to be a more open, social, relaxing experience versus when you're on a device, it's very lean in and almost interactive. And I get that makes a lot of sense in terms of that editing shift and why Mr. Beast was so successful when he sort of developed that style. But what I'm hearing you say is that's no longer the name of the game, that because of this shift to TV, we're now somewhat more, I don't want to say relaxed, but perhaps less in need of that constant prodding of stay here, stay here, stay here, the way that his editing style tends to reinforce. In your reviews, does that then get reflected as thinking a little bit less about, say, the specs on a device and more about its usability or more about how members of your family might use it? Where does that translate in your content?
Yeah, you definitely said the right thing. It's less specs and more usability, more conversational, more my experience. Instead of saying this phone has a 1440p display, which is great in low light, I could say something like this high res display when you're watching video, or I take a picture and I want to show something with a high resolution. Like it looks a lot better compared to this phone, which has a low resolution display. Just something very casual that everyone can understand. That's not just like reading off the back of the box, right? It's more what are those specs actually? What can those specs do for you instead of what are the specs actually? Whatever that device actually has.
That's so interesting. I feel like that gets reflected in so many different industries, but PC gaming is the one especially where I think we're hearing more about usability and less about specs being sort of the ultimate driver. In particular, being more cost conscious means you can't necessarily get the top of the line stuff. And it sounds like that's sort of trickling down into devices broadly, right? The stuff that you're reviewing, which tends to be phones and tablets and TVs and sound bars, et cetera. All of that, of course, that whole ecosystem is run by lots of very professional PR and communications folks. And I know that when you got into the business early on, there was a very different vibe in that ecosystem in terms of how they treated independent reviewers versus now. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like when you started in the industry and working with PR and comms folks for big brands versus what it's like today and where the pluses and minuses may come in?
Yeah, things definitely now are more so very business and very metric oriented, where instead of them wanting you to tell a story, they just want you to tell their story a lot of the times. Now you do get the outlier brands that really enjoy you as a creator, and they've thought you out and they said we love what you do, let's work together type of thing. Like your audience best, but you definitely run into those brands that would say this is exactly what we want. We want you to do it this way. Here's an example. Do it this way. So there's a lot of that just because there's so many creators that they can work with now that it's sort of like, this is what we want. If you can't do it, we'll go to somebody else. But as far as working with brands, I still have great experiences working with those brands, because a lot of times, you can slow the conversation down and say, look, this is my audience. I know my audience best. This is how to work with me. And then when you've been in the game for a long time, you start to get that leverage as well, where you could just say, listen, these are the terms in working with me. If you want to work with me, great. This is kind of how it goes down. Previously in the past, it was sort of like, it felt like more mom and pop type of brands and not these big PR agencies. I mean, I remember one time at CES, I met with a company and she didn't have money for a booth or didn't have money for a presence. And we literally sat on the floor of the convention center. She was showing me her product, like a prototype of her product, and wanted me to, promote it on my channel and things like that. It feels like those days are gone. I mean, now you even see big brands that are established doing Kickstarters, which makes no sense to me. So the game is very different. There's a lot of money in the game now. So obviously things have kind of wrangled in a little bit, which is okay. But to the extent where it's sort of, you lose the individuality and things kind of start to feel the same after a while. But of course, there's always outliers to everything.
Sure. I hear a lot of folks talk about moving away from subscribers as the main data point they care about with creator. And I hear a lot more about views, view through rates, new versus returning audience. Are you hearing the same thing? What are the types of metrics that you find yourself focused on with video performance?
Yeah, subscribers really is kind of a vanity number. It's kind of an archaic number just because it's really not about that. Just because the way YouTube is, it doesn't just, when you go to YouTube, you land on the YouTube homepage, you go to youtube.com. It doesn't show you all your subscribers' videos. It shows videos that they think you will like. So it gets to the point where subscribership really doesn't matter that much because, right now, 87% of my views comes from non-subscribers already. So you really don't make videos for your subscribers. You make videos for the algorithm and make videos for search. That's typically what you do when you're making videos and you're trying to get a lot of views. So subscribers is not a really big number. Click-through rate is kind of a big number that you look at early. So you make a video, you put it out there, you wait about an hour, look at click-through rate. If your click-through rate is low, that means thumbnail and title are two things that are not working for that video. Click-through rate is essentially when that video is presented to someone, whether it's on their homepage, whether they search for it, are they clicking that video or not? If they're not clicking it, it could be title, it could be thumbnail, but they are being presented with that video. So that's a big indication if that video is going to have success in the long run or not. And that's at that point where I start to panic and, change thumbnail and change title and kind of work my way through that. But at this point in my career, I know that that may happen. So I always have 3 titles ready to go and I always have 2 thumbnails ready to go for each video too.
Oh, let's stay with that for a second, because many years ago, our mutual friend Austin Evans once said to me that before I got into the content creation game, I'd better be really good at thumbnails and titles because that was the thing that was going to drive top of funnel more than anything else. Of course, that's proven to be true. Your experience reinforces that. How do you think about title creation and thumbnail generation? And I want to really couch this in the view of you being independent, right? You don't have somebody whose sole job is to create thumbnails for you. You have to use the time for thumbnails that eventually never get used. How do you plan for that? What is your philosophy around how to build those, and which ones, what are the metrics, or maybe I should say, what are the characteristics you look for in the thumbnails you want to start with?
It's tough. To be honest, making videos to me is the easy part. All the other stuff is the hard part for me. Titles is one of those things that I use a lot of AI tools, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I use a lot of AI tools to help me.
You're previewing the interview before I'm ready for it. How dare you? How
you
dare
like that?
you?
I'm doing a little retention editing for you.
That's
and
nice.
Coming up next, we're going to talk about AI and how.
No. Usually we're gonna capture that at the end of the interview. But okay, so you were saying, so you use AI tools, I assume, like ChatGPT or something similar for your title generation.
Yeah, so so essentially I come up with a basic title, and then I'll tell ChatGPT, like, I'm looking for a YouTube title. I would like 6 out of 10 sensationalism, and make me 10 titles and explain why you made each one. And then from there, I see all 10 titles, and then if there's one that pops out to me, I'll say, okay, make me 3 titles based off this one. And I kind of work my way through it. Then I make a human decision at the end to kind of grab a title that I particularly like. So I think of what would I click on as far as a title. like what title grabs my interest? Because there's some titles I see on a YouTube video, I'm like, wow, like that's a great title. Like I totally get why that works. So I try to build those titles up. So that's kind of a big one. I use AI to sort of help out. Also, when it comes to some content, it's kind of a continued series. So the title is already made for me, right? If it's you're reviewing a phone, it's kind of hard to make a crazy title, right? Um,
So when we dropped off before your camera decided it hated me, which I assume is the reason that just happened, we were talking about your how you were thinking about thumbnails and titles. I think we got titles pretty well established, but I want to hear more about thumbnails. Now you build them yourself. You don't have a team building your thumbnails. Um, are you using other people's thumbnails that have succeeded as your template? Are you conceiving of them completely from scratch? Or do you have templates you've put together that you like that you use as your starting place?
yeah, for me, it's just when it comes to cell phones, I pretty much have this a very consistent thumbnail that I've known to work. So it's just kind of the way I have the phone arranged and take a picture of a nice wallpaper and kind of do that and throw a little text on the screen. So I don't have a lot, but when it comes to other products that are not cell phones, that's sort of where I really start to struggle. That's sort of where I will look at other thumbnails for inspiration, or I'll just try to figure something out or kind of play with it a little bit. Um, yeah, it's just a struggle. Like I said, titles and thumbnails are the most important things, and those are the things that I really are not the best at. So that's kind of where I struggle a little bit. And kind of correct you a little bit. I actually do use a thumbnail guy if it's a thumbnail that I will struggle with. Like if it's not a cell phone, if it's something very specific and it's like a car or something different, I will work with a guy, kind of like a one-off thing. Work with a graphic design artist who will make a thumbnail for me at that point. But majority of the topics are cell phones, and I can do those thumbnails without a problem.
I have to confess that I'm thinking about that a little bit selfishly because I too am creating my own thumbnails and they're not good, and I need to figure out how to do it better. So if at some point you want to yell at me and tell me how I can do mine better, we can take that offline. Um, so you've had all of this growth over the last year personally, as well as professionally, right? You've had the opportunity to really give all of your time, as much as you reasonably can, to the work and all of this. Do you think about new formats? Do you think about, now that you have the space to do it, a little bit, innovation in terms of the kinds of videos you're presenting? Or do you feel like you've gotten, you like telling the stories you like to tell, and these are where you want to focus?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the main thing I want to lock in is a normal schedule. So I don't want to add anything else to my plate until I am in complete control and consistent. I want to do 2 videos a week. I don't want to work weekends. So I'm trying to get to that point first before I do anything else. And I feel like I'm getting close to a format and a formula. And kind of what I've discovered is when I had less time, the time I did have to work on YouTube, I spent it like 99.9% productive. Whereas I have more time now, and I would say I'm not 99.9% productive now because in my head, I have so much more time. I don't have to do all this. I don't have to lock in and things like that. So it throws it off a little bit more for me now because I'm not under this extreme time crunch anymore. I'm not with 2 laptops on my, doing 2 jobs at once anymore. Like it's more, I can really focus on it. Now I do want to tell different stories. I would love to be able to go to sports stadiums and talk about the tech behind sports stadiums and how we use technology to allow us to have a good time at a sports arena. Like that to me is the coolest thing ever. And I would love to tell those stories, but that is a lot of moving parts. That is getting connections to these sports arenas. That is having someone else with me as a camera person. That is like arranging things. That's travel. That's lodging. That's being away from family. So there's so many moving parts on those things. I just need to lock in what I can do, what I can do at home, what the generating revenue things that I do. I need to get a better system for that first before I add anything else to my plate.
As you alluded to earlier, AI helps with a lot of that. You're already using it for titles. I imagine DALL-E or some other system will be good enough to start implementing for thumbnails in the next year or two. Um, what what do you use beyond that? I mean, is your entire production line still you cutting everything manually, or are you using other tools to help facilitate some of the things that either you want to speed up or you're not as good at?
Yeah, so I definitely still use Chat GPT 4 for grabbing information about products that I'm working on. So for example, I just finished editing an earbud compilation video where I had 10 different earbuds and I'm comparing them all together. So I used ChatGPT to make a chart that lists the differences between them. So I had one like, what is the price? What's the IP rating? What are the special features? Do they have noise cancellation? So that it made this big chart for me, which made scripting the video a little bit easier. So I had like a quick reference to look up information. Now, the hard thing about that chart is you have to double check to make sure it's correct. So that gets a little bit tricky at times because then you're like, well, I could have looked it up myself at that point. So it's that. And then obviously there's a tool out there called Glean that I use to help edit A-roll. So essentially what it does, it takes what you're saying and puts it like in, so on the right-hand side, there's your video. On the left-hand side is what you're saying. And you edit the A-roll based off what you're saying. So you go through and you're reading it. Okay, I made a mistake here. You delete it. And also uses AI to determine what are mistakes. And it uses AI to cut out dead air. So if it takes me like an hour normally to chop through 20 minutes of footage, on here, it will probably take me 10 minutes to edit because it's because you're literally reading. You're reading instead of listening and watching, and then you chop, and then it puts enough padding between it. And it does an amazing job. And that's something I use all the time, chopping A-roll. And actually, I can edit A-roll without even audio because I'm just reading to a certain extent. Yeah.
Is that a tool that is specific to your editor, or is that something that you use just broadly?
You can use it broadly. It's not a specific editor because it actually export XML files, which you can input into any editing system. So you don't even have to render it out when you're done. It does require you to be connected to the internet because it is using AI to actually do it. But a lot of times I'll run it through for 3 or 4 videos I'm going to be editing, and I'll have those project files sitting there if I'm going to take a flight or something like that, and then I chop through the edit really fast. And like I said, you don't even have to have audio to go through the edit. You can literally just read the text. You can see the mistakes that you said, and you delete it. And you can also even upload your script, your transcript to it, and it cross-references it to the actual audio to even get a more precise edit the first time around.
What about your short form? I know you and I have talked about the pain that is having to then take a long form video and cut it down into tons of short form, because for better or for worse, that's the name of the game now. You have to have a bunch of shorts that go with your content. Are you doing all of that solo as well?
Yeah, so I'm using software once again called Opus Pro, and Opus Pro allows you to put a link to your video in there, and then it makes a decent determination of what will be a good short form video. Now, Tech Reviews doesn't really make a great short form video per se, but if I'm able to grab a couple clips out of that, just to kind of have the consistent flow of uploading content, which is also the name of the game now, it does help out. So if I upload one YouTube video, it's 15 minutes, it will probably generate 10 clips. I'll say probably 3 or 4 of those are usable for me to upload on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. So I have basically, I'm in every platform, and I'm just consistently uploading something, and hopefully someone watches that and will continue watching the full form video on YouTube. That's sort of the goal of that. I wish I could go without doing that, but at the same time, if you're a content creator or you're a person that's in a profession and you don't go with the trends, you're going to get left behind. So it's something that I have to actually consistently do.
Well, you make a good point. I think the other side of it too, if I can throw my 2 cents in, is that there are now, as you pointed out earlier, so many other content creators who are putting out equivalent quality content that we just don't have the bandwidth to consume all of them, right? So getting the attention of the person who's most likely to be interested in your video now takes a lot more work. And for better or for worse, short video content, a minute and a half or less, or if you're on YouTube Shorts, a minute less, that has to be the case. Good top of funnel, huge amount of extra work for you, but it sounds like Opus Pro, helps you do that pretty seamlessly. Do you ever get pushback in terms of just like, the clips that you're putting out are they not up to snuff the way that you would do them if you would do them by hand, or is it you generally on the same quality level?
Yeah, so I'm not getting any feedback. I mean, the only feedback I will have is for myself. Like I look at these clips, I'm just like, but also your short form audience is different than your long form audience. So the short form content I'm putting out is not viewed by my long form audience. And YouTube has a stat for that. YouTube will literally tell you those are different people. And when I particularly go to YouTube, my feed is full of long form video. My wife goes to YouTube, all her feed is short form video. It's two different audiences. Um, so it's just one of those things
Yeah.
that I wish things were different, but you only have so many hours within a day to do that. I mean, I would love to spend a lot of time on these 1 minute clips, but these are not revenue generating clips. Nothing I particularly like to do, and it's just kind of hard to encapsulate a 15-minute video in 1 minute, to be honest.
Being a creator is now more complicated, requires more time, as you were talking about before, even with the outstretch of time you now have on a daily basis. You've got a lot of things on your mind. You and I both have kids. More and more creators are starting later in life, right? There are still plenty of 15, 18, 22-year-old kids who are launching their content creation careers, but I'm noticing a lot more, parents who are starting their stuff and now are balancing that with their fairly established day-to-day life. Um, how has being a dad changed your perspective on your work? And tell me about the stuff that's made it better and the stuff that's made it more difficult.
Yeah, I would say just for me, being a father, and I'm sure you can relate, and anyone that's a parent can relate, especially a father. Um, it's like there's a lot on the line, right? Like, for me as being the provider of my family, it's just I have to really focus on the little things that can make me different. Like, you know, if for just like I tell people, like if I'm not making videos, I'm not making money at this certain point, right? Even though I have freedoms to sort of work as I please, I have to work. I have to do these things to provide for my family. So for me, it's just more of a sense of responsibility to continue to be relevant, to continue to make content, continue not to get left behind, because it's not just me that I'm doing this for. I'm doing this for my whole family. So for me, it's just more so like when I'm at work, and when I'm being a dad, I have to be a dad, and I can't be focusing on work at the same time, which it's an everyday struggle to be 100% honest. It is tough to balance the two, but I need to show up for my son every single day. And I need to show up for my work every single day. So I have to figure out a way to merge those two worlds together.
I I feel that it's hard. It's hard. I mean, let me commiserate with you for a second. We're fortunate that right now both of our kids are off at school and doing their thing. But when I'm home and trying to get work done, I've got a little gremlin who comes over here. And we're in my living room, right? This is not a private studio the way that you have, although it's still part of your house.
Yeah.
I've got little man who's coming over here who's insisting on, we got to play games, we got to do stuff. I need your attention. I can't be here. Focus. I imagine for you, particularly given that this has been your livelihood before he showed up, that's been an adjustment over the years to figure out how to make those, priorities, the ones that you want to make with him, the most important, but at the same time also keeping track of your work schedule and your production schedule and your commitment to your sponsors and whatnot. That's a lot to juggle.
Yeah. And, I've sort of been juggling everything for a very long time. And it's easier than it was, but having the full-time job, having the child, and doing the YouTube thing, it was
Right.
very tough. I mean, it was just sort of like I didn't have a life.
Not to mention having a partner. I mean, we're both also
Yeah.
married. Like, it's not as if you're doing this as a single dad. So
Yeah.
balancing all of that and your at-home relationships, do you get a break? Do you get a vacation to yourself? Do you get, I mean, what do you do? What do you do to like give yourself your alone time?
The only thing I get to do 4 months out of the year is play golf. That's kind of my me time. So I would try to get out early in the morning on a weekend, kind of play golf, and if I have a slower day during the week, I can get out and play 9 holes. Um, I try to get to the gym and exercise. So it's kind of those things. I don't know the last time I've had like a fun vacation. Thankfully, with YouTube, I do travel a lot, and I am able to take an extra day if I go somewhere, and that's fine. But for the most part, it's this crazy madhouse that I'm always like constantly running and feel like I'm always putting out fires. And I've only been full time just a little less than a year, and when I went full time, there's like a lot of other stuff going on too. So it wasn't like, I'm full time. It was just like, okay, I'm full time. Now it's go time. Now it's go time. But I need to get to a space or a spot where I'm just content and say, okay, this is my schedule. This is how I'm going to work it. This is my vacation, and really treat it as a night, like treat it as a job, and go home. When I get to go home and turn my mind off from work. And that is just, that's a constant struggle. I really hope I can get to that point.
I'm sure you can. I mean, you and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for, God, 7 years now, at least. Boy, that went fast. Um, and I've really admired your progression, not only as a professional content creator, but as a husband and a dad, and watching you, you know, figure struggles is not the word I would use for you. You've used it once or twice, but adjusting, figuring out. You're a surfer. You're just riding the waves, and I think you've got a real commitment that is admirable, and is not different than a lot of other people too, right? We're all in this struggle together. So, I mean, let me just say as a sidebar, kudos, man. You're doing it right. It's hard, but you're doing it right. And
Appreciate
and
that.
I think golfing sounds to me like a great value add for you. I think you should think about becoming a golf influencer. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I have a golf Instagram that I do not promote because I want organic following. I don't want
Okay.
friends to follow just to follow. So I have a golf Instagram, and it gets pretty good views. I don't have a lot of
Okay.
followers, but I enjoy it. But then here comes the struggle, Jay. I turn everything into a business. I can't just
Mm.
enjoy things to enjoy things. So then I was trying to like record one of my like record a round while playing, but then I'm like, no, I'm focusing on the camera, focusing on setting up the shot, focusing on, and it's just like, no, I want to do this to relax. I want to do this to enjoy things. So it, yeah, it gets to that point where I try to make everything into a business. Unfortunately, like I have a 3D printer that like I'm printing knickknacks out. And I'm like, man, what if I can like make a bunch of things for Mother's Day, buy plants, buy flowers. I'm like, why am I even worrying about this? I have a whole YouTube channel I need to worry about. I'm like sitting here trying to make a 3D printing business. Like it's just my mind. I'm a serial entrepreneur, you know.
I love that. But that also speaks, again, it speaks to the ethos you're bringing to the work, which is you're always looking, even if the format isn't changing every video, even if it's not something that's spectacularly brand new, you are innovating and you're looking at new opportunities. That's an important mindset to have, I think. Is that something that you've always had? Is that something that's developed over time?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I've always had this like hustler's mindset. I remember when I'm about to date myself. I remember in high school, burn CDs were the thing, and I had a CD burner, but I didn't just burn a CD for you, Jay. Like I had the full on deck where you can do 10 CDs at once. And
Oh
before I
boy.
went to school, I used to load them all in, and then I used to have the hot songs of the week that I would have one disc for. And then I'll take orders at school that I'll go home for lunch, burn all those CDs and bring it to you after lunch for $5. You get the hot songs of the week. And that was like my thing. And like I got to the point where I was like about to buy three of these things because I mean I was getting like orders. People were like pre-ordering the stupid hot songs of the week thing. And I was like, I made more money doing that than I did in my caddy job when I was a golf caddy too. So like I literally quit my golf caddy job to just burn CDs for people. Then I learned how to remote into my computer, so I would set the burn off when I was in my computer lab class. That was right before lunch. Collect the CDs, put more CDs in, and burn them during lunch, and then come back. So I would then have 20 CDs instead of 10 CDs, and just I used to do ringtones for people who had Nextel phones. I used to make ringtones with the Nextel data cable, and just yeah, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing.
I didn't know that about you. I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because if that
Yeah,
isn't if that isn't innovation at a young age, if that isn't, an entrepreneur in the making, in action, actually, I don't know
yeah,
what is. That's awesome.
yeah.
Our mutual friend, Andrew Edwards, Gear Live, I don't know what title he gives himself now, editor, host, grand poobah.
Something.
One of the things I love is that he does the same thing, right? You have with him a kindred spirit, and I know the two of you are great friends. You talk all the time, but I
Sure.
I I just want to bring him up in part because I feel like he does the same kind of thing where everything turns into a business, everything turns into a new opportunity, and I think it's so important. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, of having friends like that who keep pushing you, who keep encouraging you, because it's one thing to feel that in yourself. It's another when it's just you by yourself, and that can get really lonely, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, some of my best, I would say my best friends in life are people that create content as well. And it wasn't just something that I developed. It was just I I realized that my mind is very different compared to most people. Like it's taken me some time to realize that. So some of the friends I grew up with, they don't look at things the way I look at things. We look at things extremely extremely different. And it's just yeah, it's just really hard to have that. And then when you meet someone that has that same mindset, you don't have to over explain anything. Like you just talk, and that person just talks back. And there's not this dual explanation of things. It's just, and it's kind of a nice synergy. So yes, some of my best friends are people that create content as well. Andrew Edwards, I consider him my best friend, and it's just because we understand each other very well. It just makes sense. It's the craziest thing. And I don't know. Like my therapist tells me that I have this naive mindset that everyone is sort of like me when it comes to like business and generating ideas and money and da, da, da. Like she's like, no, everyone's not like you. Most people are not like you. Most people are not looking at opportunities as ways to drive revenue or ways to build a business. And like you're thinking these long term goals, and most people are just thinking about how could they get what they want here and now. And I'm just thinking these long term abstract ideas. And yeah, it's just I don't know. No else way to explain it than just like when you feel understood, you're understood.
I love that. I love that you can find a sense of community. I love that you also, talk for a moment there about, going to therapy, which I've done too. I think that's an important aspect of modern adulthood. If you can get, access to somebody who can help you be a mirror back to yourself and to see the kinds of things that help you go, oh, that's not how everybody thinks. And I am unique in that way. And I need to remember that when I'm engaging with other people. That's a huge value add and kind of even a superpower.
Yeah, no, yeah, therapy has been really good for me. I don't think I don't think you need to be going through a crisis to have therapy. I just think it is good to have a conversation with someone who has a skill set to analyze and to who's not trying to be your friend, who can just tell you the truth about yourself. And there's things that all of us can work on. I mean, if you're feeling good, hopefully every year you still go to the doctor. Hopefully you get a checkup. Maybe there's some things in your life that you don't know is a problem, or you don't know how it can be seen. And if you have the means and a way to do it, you should always at least check in once a month or something. If obviously if you can, check in at least
Yeah.
once a month. And maybe there's anything in the past or anything going on or something you can work through, so you can say, you know what, maybe I thought about that differently, or that is a different way to think about things, or that is something in my life I need to check myself on because maybe I have some unresolved issues, or maybe I have some privilege that I don't realize that I have. And when I engage with people, I don't want to come off the wrong way.
Yeah, I think of it as working with a personal trainer or going to the gym, right? It's not something that you do when you have a crisis, although that is certainly a good time to start if you need to, but that it's something that you do on the regular to keep yourself mentally fit as well as physically fit. So 100% there. Well, I want to wrap us up here. You've been very generous with your time despite the technical snafus. One last question for you. So recently I was listening to a Vlogbrothers video where I think it was Hank Green talking about the various channels of content that they produce as being kinds of conversations, right? That conversations have to end at some point, whether it's by choice or happenstance. So what I'd love to ask you as we close out is, when you think back to your creative work and the conversation that you're helping contribute to, what do you most want to be remembered for that conversation, whether it's by your son or your fans or other members of the community?
Yeah, so I mean, I've thought about this a little bit, just sort of like talking to my dad, and he'll tell me things about the past, and I just have to go from word of mouth, right? And the interesting thing is, my son will be able to basically see my life and see how I've grown and changed from the age of 20 to whenever I stopped making YouTube videos, which I think it's will be pretty amazing. Lord willing, I'll be here a very long time, and I continue to make videos because I do enjoy making videos, and he can see my growth over the years, which I think is really cool. As far as like a legacy standpoint, I used to think that, maybe my son will want to take this over, and it just kind of continues on like the family business. But at the same time, I don't want to put expectations on him. So it's one of those things that, yeah, this conversation will eventually end, and at least I could be a person that was on the cutting edge when it came to technology as it evolved over time. I mean, Apple Vision Pro, right? I bought it, I covered it, and it's just like every new thing that comes out, I want to cover it. I want to like be sort of like the Tom Brokaw of technology and be able to report technology over the years. Because anytime you watch a documentary of something that happened in history, they dust off Tom Brokaw and he was there. Like it's the craziest thing ever. So I want to be a dusty Tom Brokaw when it comes to technology, and I want to be able to just, categorize and talk technology the rest, maybe the rest of my life, or one day I just kind of call it quits. So I don't know. I don't think legacy a ton right now, and maybe that's a conversation that will organically come up with age. But it is interesting, even for me, to go back and watch a video from 10 years ago to kind of see where I was in that time and space, because I don't remember making video. I don't remember making those videos. So watching it is me talking, and I see the same things I do today, like the same sayings, the same looks, and the editing style. Like all those things are progressing with time, but it still encapsulates who I am as a person. And I think that is I think that's going to be really cool to see in 30, 40 years.
Awesome. I can't wait. It's been my pleasure to be on the journey with you. I can't wait to see what you do in the next 30 to 40 years. I think it's going to continue to be impressive and, dare I say, revolutionary. So with that, man, thank you. This has been a real pleasure, and I love chatting with you. I hope you'll come back again in a year and tell us more about how things are going.
For sure, Jay. Always a great time to talk to you. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be one of your first guests, and you invited me back again. I love to see kind of what happens with your transitions in life and all those things, and I love to see where this thing turns into. So yeah.
No, you're very kind. Well, world domination is my goal. So just, you can help me do that, and we'll figure it out from there. It's no problem.
Let's do it.
All right, love it. Well, thanks again, and have a great day. See you later.
All right, you as well, man.